Right, this is me reading Lord of the Rings for a couple minutes, see how far I get. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 11th birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. Bilbo was very rich and very peculiar. Okay. And he had been the wonder of the Shire for 60 years. Ever since his remarkable disappearance and unexpected return. Alright, that's the end of the sentence. That's not read right. The riches he had brought back from his travels had now become a local legend, and it was popularly believed, whatever the old folk might say, that the hill at Bag End was full of tunnels stuffed with treasure. And if that was not enough for fame, there was also his prolonged vigour to marvel at. Time wore on, but it seemed to have little effect on Mr. Baggins. At 90 he was much the same as at 50. At 99 they began to call him well preserved, but unchanged would have been nearer the mark. There were some that shook their heads and thought that this was too much of a good thing. It seemed unfair that anyone should possess apparently perpetual youth as well as reputedly inexhaustible wealth. It will have to be paid for, they said. It isn't natural and trouble will come of it. But so far trouble had not come, and as Mr. Baggins was generous with his money, most people were willing to forgive him his oddities. and his good fortune. He remained on visiting terms with his relatives, except of course the Sackville Bagginses, and he had many devoted admirers amongst the hobbits of poor and unimportant families. But he had no close friends until some of his younger cousins began to grow up. The eldest of these, and Bilbo's favourite, was young Frodo Baggins. When Bilbo was 99, he adopted Frodo as his heir, and brought him to live at Bag End. And the hopes of the Sackville Bagginses were finally dashed. Bilbo and Frodo happened to have the same birthday, September 22nd. "You had better come and live here, Frodo my lad," said Bilbo one day, "and then we can celebrate our birthday parties comfortably together." At that time Frodo was still in his tweens, and the hobbits called the irresponsible 20s. At that time Frodo was still in his tweens, and as the hobbits called the irresponsible 20s between childhood and coming of age at 33. 12 more years passed. Each year the Bagginses had given very lively combined birthday parties at Bag End, but now it was understood that something quite exceptional was being planned for that autumn. Bilbo was going to be 111, 111, a rather curious number, and a very respectable age for a hobbit. The old Took himself had reached 130, fool of a Took. And Frodo was going to be 33, an important number, the date of his coming of age. Tongues began to wag in Hobbiton and Byweather, and rumours of the coming event travelled all over the Shire. The history and character of Mr. Bilbo Baggins became once again the chief topic of conversation, and the older folk suddenly found their reminiscences in welcome demand. No one had a more attentive audience than old Ham Gamgee, commonly known as the Gaffer. He held forth at the Ivy Bush, a small inn on the Bywater Road, and he spoke with some authority, for he had tended the garden at Bag End for 40 years, and had helped old Holman in the same job before that. Now that he was himself growing old and stiff in the joints, the job was mainly carried on by his youngest son, Sam Gamgee. Both father and son were on very friendly terms with Bilbo and Frodo, They lived on the hill itself in number 3, Bagshot Row, just below Bag End. A very nice, well-spoken, gentle hobbit is Mr. Bilbo. As I've always said, the gaffer declared, with perfect truth, for Bilbo was very polite to him, calling him Master Hamfast, and consulting him constantly upon the growing of vegetables and the matter of roots, especially potatoes. Potatoes, Mr. Frodo. Okay, I think that's enough.